So he said the first and the second is al-gharib, and the first is al-gharib, the second is al-mu'arrab. So the poem, he said, يرجع للنقل لدى الغريب ما جاء كالمشكاة في التعريب. So he says يرجع للنقل لدى الغريب. Whenever a gharib word shows up in the Quran, and by extension in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, to understand them, we must refer to transmitted narration. We must go back to what has been narrated. So just mere knowing the Arabic language is not enough in order to give an explanation as to what the gharib means. We must go back to something that has been transmitted. So first of all, we go back to the Quran. If there is, for example, a word shows up in one part of the Quran and there's a clarification in another part of the Quran, then we take the part that clarifies as the meaning for the part that did not clarify. So if a word shows up in one part of the Quran unclarified, and then it's clarified in another part of the Quran, then that we take the second one as an explanation of all occurrences of that word. And this is rare, where the Quran explains the meaning of another word that is taken, and this is the meaning throughout the entire Quran. So Quran, or we go back to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, where the Prophet ﷺ explains the meaning of a word in the Quran that people may know, but the context does not have the same meaning as people are accustomed to. And this happens quite a lot in the Quran. There's a famous, for example, there's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ, where the companions asked the Prophet ﷺ, when the ayah about those who oppress themselves was revealed. And the companion says, who among us does not oppress himself? Oppress yourself means oppress yourself as in commit sins, so the recipient of the harm is the self. Or the Quran uses all of humanity uses the singular human being to represent all of humanity. This is a common thing in the Quran. So for example, if you hurt another person, because that other person is human, it is like you're hurting yourself. So this, where the Quran uses the term yourself to actually mean others, is something throughout the Quran. So the companion says, who among us does not harm or oppress himself? Meaning either himself or another human being. So the Prophet ﷺ explained to them that oppress himself in that ayah is not speaking about normal oppression or transgression. It's referring to shirk. So now they understood that oppressing yourself in that ayah doesn't mean harm to yourself or another, it means to commit shirk. So to understand the meaning, we go back to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, or an explanation from the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. Even if they are not attributing the explanation to the Prophet ﷺ. Because when it comes to tafsir of gharib, we treat any hadith that stops at a companion, we treat it as if it is a marfu' hadith. And things that the companions are not allowed to exercise their own judgment. Those things, anything in which it is not permitted for the companion to exercise his own judgment, but the companion, we have a sahih chain of something attributed to a companion, where the companion is not attributing it to the Prophet ﷺ, we treat it as if it is attributed to the Prophet ﷺ, because the companions would not make something like that up on their own. And the companions are udul, they are all trustworthy. So we wouldn't even suspect that they are making it up or that they are lying. As long as the chain is sahih, then we take it. So we go back to the Quran, or we go back to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, or to the statement of the companions, radiyallahu ta'ala anhum wa ardahum, or the tabi'un who learns tafsir from the companions. So even if we do not find it being attributed to the companions, the chain of narration stops at a tabi'i. If that tabi'i is a mufassir, that tabi'i is known for learning tafsir from the companions, then we take that as a valid explanation of that word of the Quran. If we cannot find it in any narration that goes back to the Quran itself, the Prophet ﷺ, the Sahaba or the Tabi'un, then experts in the Arabic language who know Arabic language before Islam and from the time of Jahiliyyah and after Islam, then we take their word for it. And we see this, we learn this from the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. We see that Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala anhu wa ardah, when he wanted to learn, when he wanted to know certain meanings of words of the Quran, he would refer back to those who had knowledge of the Arabic language from among the Arabs. And we know Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu wa ardah, he also used to do this many times. In fact, Ibn Abbas said that it's not permitted for anyone to explain the Quran if they are not experts in the Arabic language. And by expert in the Arabic language, we mean they know Arabic language pre-Islam and after Islam. Because it's an Arabic text. So we need to go back to the experts in the Arabic language. And if someone is explaining Quran or Hadith or the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and they're explaining words to give specific meaning of gharib words, if they are not relying on naql, on transmission, then whatever they explain must be rejected. And this is mentioned in the books of Usul al-Fiqh and in the books of Ulum al-Hadith. Al-Imam al-Khatib al-Baghdadi rahimahullah ta'ala, he said any explanation of gharib, any explanation of a gharib word that is not based on naql is rejected, because it's the opinion of the person who is giving that explanation. It's not something authoritative. It's not something authoritative. So he said, rahimahullah, yurja'u lil-naqli lada al-gharibi. So whenever a gharib shows up, we go back to what has been transmitted in order to know what it means. ما جاء في المشكات في التعريب. A waw is missing here. When I say missing, it's not a mistake, but the author omitted it because of the poem, to maintain the scale of the poem. So it's supposed to be, in terms of meaning, وَمَا جَاءَ كَالْمِشْكَاتِ فِي التَّعْرِيبِ, and then the predicate of that sentence is يُرْجَعُ لِلنَّقْلِ, meaning يُرْجَعُ لِلنَّقْلِ لَدَى الْغَرِيبِ وَيُرْجَعُ لِلنَّقْلِ لِمَا جَاءَ من التعليل كالمشكل. That's the original meaning of the sentence. Anyways, he says, and whatever appears in the Quran, whatever shows up in the Quran of Arabized words. Arabized is just a close translation, but what we actually mean is where the word is originally not Arabic, but it is used by the Arabs in common speech or in ordinary speech. So, before that, there's a difference of opinion among the ulama as to whether there are any type of words that are not originally Arabic in the Quran. The Quran describes itself as Arabic. It's Quran in Arabic. In several verses in the Quran that describes the Quran as being Arabic. So, is there anything in the Quran that is not Arabic? So, there's a difference of opinion among the ulama. So, Imam Shafi'i radiallahu anhu, Shafi'i, Qadi Abu Bakr al-Baqillani, Abu Ubaidah, Ibn al-Faris, Imam al-Tabari, Muhammad ibn Jarir al-Tabari, al-Mufassir, they all are of the opinion that there is no word in the Quran, not a single word in the Quran, that is not 100% originally Arabic. And the reason for that opinion is, as we said, the verses of the Quran that describes it as being Arabic. And then there's a verse in the Quran that says, if we had made the Quran, if we had made the Quran a'jami, if we had made the Quran other than Arabic, they would have said, they would have asked, why is in the Quran in Arabic? أعجمي وعربي. So they would ask, is it a mixture of Arabic and non-Arabic? So based on these ayat, some of the ulama say that there is no non-Arabic word in the Quran. This is a minority position. According to the majority, there is non-Arabic words in the Quran. When we say non-Arabic, we mean Arabic words that are used by Arabs in ordinary speech, the Arabs at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, but originally they are not Arabic. Like Mishkat, the example he gives here is the word Mishkat. Al-Mishkat. Now, this is the position of, we said, the majority. This is the position mentioned by Imam Ibn Jawzi, rahimahullah ta'ala, in his work on Ulum al-Quran. And there are books that compile the words that are originally not Arabic. Imam Suyuti, rahimahullah ta'ala, has a book called Al-Muhaddab Fima Ja'a fil Qur'an min ghayri kalam al-Arab, or something like that. And there are others. There's a book by Al-Jamaliki, rahimahullah ta'ala, who's considered an authoritative work in that field, that gathered all of the words in the Quran that are originally not Arabic but are used among the Arabs. So for them, what they would argue is that when the Quran describes itself as Arabic, it means Arabic language used by the Arabs. So these are words used by the Arabs, so it does not contradict the ayah that says the Quran is Arabic. Also, in the Arabic language, it is common to describe things, anything. Not only in Arabic, this I guess is common in most languages, where it is valid to describe a thing with an adjective if majority of that thing is that way. If you look at a house, for example, and most of it is white, they have strips of gray or something like that, it would be correct in English to say the white house. Though they're other than white, mixed with the white. But what you mean is, when you look at it, the dominant feature is that it is white. So describing it as white, or having strips of other than white, does not negate the description of it being white. So they would argue when the Quran says it's Arabic, it means it's mostly Arabic, or it is Arabic in speech. And these are words used by the Arabs. So the Arabs will not recognize these words as being foreign because this is the words that they use in common speech. It will be like okay. In many languages in the world, they use words like okay. So okay wouldn't be foreign to them because it is so commonly used by their own people that it's being adopted into their language. So these are the type of. So this is how they would argue. As for the ayah, it says that if we had made it other than Arabic, they would have objected, and they would say Al-Quran a'jami wa Arabi. They say that a'jamiyun wa Arabi actually means rasulun a'jamiyun, or so cut out the detail. They would say yani mukhatibun Arabi. وَمُخَاطَبٌ أَعْجَمِي وَمُخَاطَبٌ عَرَبِي. What they're saying is that they would ask, is it a foreign tongue addressing Arabic people? Like, is this dialogue of the Quran between a foreigner or a foreign book or a foreign prophet to an Arab people? So the question is not about particular words. So what they would say is that ayah means if the entire book was other than Arab, or if the one sent was other than Arab, was non-Arab, then the people would have asked, how could we have a messenger sent with a clear message, but he is of one tongue and the recipients of the messages are of a different tongue? So that's what the ayah means. The ayah is not saying that the Quran cannot have a single word in it that is not originally Arabic. Anyway, so at the end of the day, the majority of the ulama say that there are foreign words in the Quran, but they're only foreign in the sense of their linguistic roots, not in their usage. But everything in the Quran, in terms of usage, is Arabic in the sense that the Arabs use it. Another thing that strengthens this argument is that by agreement of the ulama, words like Ibrahim and Musa and Isa in the Quran, they are mamnu' min as-sarf. In Arabic language, they are not subject to the rules of the I'rab rules. There's a type of words in the Arabic language called gharb and sarf. They're excluded from the normal rules of the I'rab. They have some particular rules that relate to them, and all of the ulama agree that these words are non-munsarif. Why? There are usually two reasons that have to, if they combine, it makes a word mamnu' min as-sarf. One of them is being foreign. And so by agreement, the reason that these words, one of the reasons that these words are ghayr munsarif is because they're ajam. So how can you agree that they are ajam and that's why they are ghayr munsarif, but then say that there is no foreign words in the Quran? Here's just some arguments. Anyway, he says, يرجع للنقل لدى الغريب وما جاء كالمشكاة في التعريب. Whenever these words occur, the mu'arrab words, how do we know their meaning? So he's saying the same thing that we said about gharib. Gharib cannot be explained except if we have a transmitted explanation. The same thing goes for the mu'arrab words. In order for us to know what they mean in the particular verses of the Quran in which they appear, we must go back to some transmission. In other words, to put it simply, these words cannot be explained by ijtihad. Gharib and mu'arrab terms in the Quran cannot be explained by ijtihad. And the tafsir of them, to say exactly what they mean in the ayat in which they appear, cannot be done based on rational judgment. It has to be based on transmission from the Prophet ﷺ or the companions. So he says, Kal mishkat, like the word mishkat. Mishkat is a Habashi word. It's originally an Ethiopian word that meant a little space in a wall that they would put a candle. Back in the days when they didn't have lights, so there's a little space in the wall, a little hole in the wall that they would put a candle. This was called mishkat in the language of the Ethiopians, Habashi. And this was narrated by Ibn Abi Hatim from Mujahid, was collected by Ibn Abi Hatim from the narration of Mujahid ibn Jabal radiallahu ta'ala. Other examples is this awwa. The word awwa. Surah Hud, verse 75. There's a word awwa. And awwa means, in Arabic, we would say it's Arabic, and it's not originally non-Arabic, then it just means tahazzub. In the Arabic language, the meaning of the word awwa. So basically, there's a difference of opinion among the ulama of tafsir. Is this one of those foreign words, or is this an Arabic word? if it's an Arabic word originally, then what it means is to show regret or to have sadness over something. But if it's not an Arabic word, and in the ayah it means merciful, it means clement, it means kind, it means to have compassion for others, then the root is again a Habashi root. It's another Ethiopian root, and this again was collected by Ibn Abi Hatim from the narration of Sharhabil from Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu wa arda. And there are other opinions concerning that word. So then he said, Awwabu was-sijillu thumma al-kibru. So the second, another example he gave, the third example is as-sijil. Sijil. I think this is in so as-sijil, the meaning of it, again, it's another Habashi word, it's another Ethiopian word that meant a person. This person. In the ayah, Allah Azza wa Jalla says that on the day, Yawm al-Qiyamah, Allah Azza wa Jalla will fold the world, flatten the world, the way a sijil would close a book. So a sijil here, so originally the Habashi language just means person, but in this ayah it means a scribe. So if somebody's writing on a book, the way when he's finished writing, he'll just close it like that. That's the analogy that is in the ayah, that Allah Azza wa Jalla will flatten the world and bring it to a close the way a scribe would close a book when it's done. When it's open, and then that's it, it's open. So again, this is originally an Ethiopian word based on the narration of Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and this was collected by Ibn Mardawi rahimahullah. Some, like Ibn Jinni rahimahullah, and others say that originally it's a Persian word, not an Ethiopian word, but it has a similar meaning. Then he says al-kifl, thumma al-kiflu. Al-kifl is also an Ethiopian word that means an increase or an exponential growth, or a doubling of something. Increase it by twofold. This was collected by Ibn Abi Hatim from the narration of Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu wa arda. Then in the other line he says كذلك القسطاس وهو العدل. Another example is the word al-qistas. Qistas is a Roman word originally, and Zamzam says وهو العدل, that the meaning of it in the Roman language originally is justice. Al-Adl. But others, like Mujahid ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and others, they say that it actually means the scale that determines just portions. So it doesn't mean justice, but it means a scale that determines just portions. In other words, just a scale. Something that's used to measure just portions. So it meaning justice, which is what is mentioned by Zamzami rahimahullah, this was collected by Al-Faryabi from the narration of Mujahid ibn Jabr radiallahu ta'ala. and it meaning a scale was collected by Ibn Abi Hatim from the narration of Sa'id ibn Jubayr radiyallahu ta'ala anhu wa arda. So then he said, وَهَذِهِ وَنَحْوُهَا قَدْ أَنْكَرَ جُمْهُورُهُمْ بِالْوِفْقِ قَالُوا إِحْضَارًا. So he said, this and the likes, these examples, and other examples, basically the concept that there is non-Arabic words in the Quran, or Arabic words where the origin is non-Arabic. He says that majority of the ulama deny this. He's saying majority. According to Zamzami, the majority deny the existence. But in reality, the majority, it's the opposite. The majority say they exist. And the minority views that they do not exist. Majority and minority is something that if you read the books of the tradition, they differ a lot on majority versus minority. This is something that you always find. For example, especially when the works of the ulama were less distributed or less accessible. So for example, when books were now being compiled, if all, for example, let's say there are 20 scholars who wrote about a topic in Iraq. And it will take a while for the books in Iraq to reach, let's say, for example, a place like Bukhara, a place like Iran, for example. And let's say there are 20 scholars in Iran who wrote on the same subject. And of the 20 in Iran, 2 said X and 18 says Y. And in Iraq, 2 says something, 2 of them say something, and 18 say something. The one who's studying the words of the ulama in Iraq, for him the majority said this, the minority said that. So if he's writing, he's going to present that. Based on his research, majority say this, minority say this. And the same would happen to somebody who's studying the words in Iran. That's based on what we were able to find at that time. So let's say somebody later on now, they got both sets of books on the same topic from Iraq and from Iran, and it switched. Let's say that in Iran, 2 were saying this, but in Iraq, the 18 were saying what the 2 were saying here. And then you flip it around when the books came here. What is majority and what is minority now is going to differ for somebody who's now examining both sets of literature. So this is something that happened a lot, especially the earlier periods of the Islamic tradition. So a lot of times when we say majority and minority, what you will find the majority saying in the earlier parts of the Ummah, and then later on you'll see somebody will say, describe what the earlier people described as a majority position will be described by the later ulama as a minority position. Just because they had access to much more. So when they're just merely looking at numbers, the number would be different. Doesn't mean authority is different. It just means the number, because to determine majority and minority is a matter of just numbers, simple statistics. The number is greater. But the authority of the position may not be greater. And this is something you always have to remember. Tarjih. The earlier ulama, when they did tarjih means to preponderate between different opinions, to say which is stronger or which is weaker. They did it not based on numbers. They did it based on principles. So, principle determined which is a stronger position, not the numbers. While in the later part of the Ummah, where people became less qualified to determine by principle, number became a factor, where we have a greater majority of qualified people said this, so that's what we will work with. But in the earlier part of the Ummah, tarjih was not done by numbers, done by principle. Even to the point where Ibn Hajar, for example, rahimahullah, he said you may find a fatwa that has been given by 1,000 alim or muftis, and you will find another fatwa given by a single alim, and the possibility is the fatwa of the single alim is more authoritative than the fatwa of the 1,000. Simply because the strength of the evidence that supported the fatwa of this one outweighs the strength of the evidence used by the 1,000. Anyway, so Az-Zamzami said that the majority position is that there is no non-Arabic word in the Quran, while the minority position is that there is. But in reality, it's the opposite. The majority say that it is, the minority say that it did not occur. So those who say that there are no words in the Quran that are originally non-Arabic, how do they, or what do they say about the words that he mentioned? Words like Mishkat and Qastas and Sajid. He said, rahimahullah, the poem says, قَدْ أَنْكَرَ جُمْهُرُهُمْ بِالْوِفْقِ قَالُوا. They say that these words are merely coincidental. These words exist in both languages. So they exist in Arabic originally, and they happen to also exist with the same form and the same meaning in other languages, which is something that linguists discuss a lot. Right? Linguists discuss two types of similarities, or not simple exactness in words. There are words that show up in different languages, but with same form, different meanings. Same form, the sound phonetically is the same. Spelling doesn't matter, it's all from the sounds. The sound is the same, but the meaning in the different languages, in terms of what this word means here, what it means here, are different. And there are words that sound exactly the same, phonetically in different languages, that mean exactly the same thing in the different languages. So it doesn't mean that this one learns it from this one, or that this one borrowed it from that one. It simply means there's a coincidence that occurred somehow, historically. There's a coincidence where in this language they have the exact word that means the exact thing in this other language. So he said, بِالْوِفْقِ قَالُ. Those who deny the existence of any word in the Quran that's not originally Arabic, they would say of words like Mishkat and Kifl and Qistas that they happened to exist in the Ethiopian and the Persian and the Roman languages to have the exact same meaning that they happen to have in the Arabic language. This is merely a coincidence, not that the Arabs borrowed these words from other languages. She said, بِالْوِفْقِ قَالُوا إِحْذَرَ just means, so be wary of that other position. It's a warning against the other position. And that's just because Az-Zamzami, rahimahullah, is supporting this position. But in reality, it's a difference of opinion. Both positions are supported by authoritative ulama. And bear in mind that Imam Shafi'i is an expert in the Arabic language. Imam Shafi'i's position is that every single word in the Quran originally is Arabic. So the position of Imam Shafi'i when it comes to Arabic language is authoritative. In fact, of the four Imams, the four Muslim Imams, Shafi'i was more knowledgeable in Arabic language. Even the experts in the Arabic language at the time said that Imam Shafi'i is an authority. And some people would say, I can't remember the name, one of the scholars said that I lived with the Bedouin, different tribes, for a long time, and then I met Imam Shafi'i, and he would tell me words of the Arabs that I haven't heard among 20 or 30 tribes. So, that just gives weight to the position of Imam Shafi'i. And then he said, So the first and the second al-gharib wal-mu'arras. The third of the 7 segments is al-majaz. Al-majaz, figuration or non-literal speech. So, in terms of literal versus non-literal, the words of the Arabic language or the Arabic language is separated into 2 categories. You have haqiqa and you have majaz. Translation, people use different terms to translate. The general idea is literal versus non-literal. Al-haqiqa is literal. The meaning of haqiqa in this context is a word that is used in the original meaning for which it was developed. It's hard to replace the original, for the original meaning that word was there. Well, that's a difficult word to translate. So anyway, a word that is used for its original reference. If you use a word for the original reference of that word, then the usage of that word is a haqiqi usage, literal usage. If a word is used to represent other than the original reference, then the usage of that word is majazi, is non-literal. So keep this definition in mind. So haqiqa is simply the usage of a word to represent its original reference. Majaz is the usage of a word to represent other than the original reference. Is there majaz in the Quran? So, is there majaz in the Arabic language? Majority. This is almost a non-disputable point. So in history there were those who disputed this point. But it is in the Arabic language, as it is in most languages. But did it occur in the Quran? Majority, the overwhelming majority of the ulama say that majaz occurs in the Quran. In fact, frequently. There is a lot of majaz in the Quran. However, some say that there is no majaz in the Quran. So the Zahiriyya, which is a literalist group that emerged sometime during the 200s and 200 Hijri, they would say, the later Zahiris, not the early Zahiris, the later Zahiris would say that there is no majaz in the Quran. But the opinions of the Zahiris are not really counted for ijma' and khilaf. So according to the majority of the later Shafi'is, we don't consider the words of the Zahiris in ijma' and khilaf.
Is it part of the Sunni?
Depends, because the word Sunni can be used in different contexts. The word Sunni sometimes simply means Sunni versus Shia. In that context, they are Sunni, in the sense that they are not Shia. The word Sunni can also mean the methodology is in line with the teachings of the Sunnah, meaning the Prophet ﷺ, and the community of the Sahaba and those who follow that methodology. In that sense, it's disputable whether they're Sunni or not. So, the later Shafi'is would not consider the opinions of the Zahiris in terms of ijma' and khilaf. Some would, but some won't. In other words, if you have the agreement of the ulama on a certain matter, and the Zahiris have a different opinion, we won't say there's a difference of opinion, because we won't consider the Zahiris as authoritative enough to say that they are different. Because differences of opinion is only where differences occur between the authorities. But if these are not authorities, then it's not a difference of opinion. So basically, their opinion is like the opinion of ordinary, non-qualified people. And this is the same for the Malikis and the same for the Hanafis. I don't know what the Hanafi ulama say. So sometimes you'll see people counting their words as a difference of opinion, as we're doing here, but sometimes they don't, because they're not authoritative enough to count their opinion. Anyway, that's the opinion of some of the Zahiris. And Ibn al-Qas, who was the Shafi'i Imam, he also said that there's no majaz in the Quran. And Ibn Khuwais Mandaz, who is a Maliki Imam, died I think about maybe 390 something Hijriya, he also said that there's no majaz in the Quran. Ibn Qas and Ibn Khuwais are authoritative scholars. Ibn Taymiyyah also says that there's no majaz in the Quran, but that's because he said there's no majaz in language to begin with, which is following the opinion of Al-Kindi. Anyway, the overwhelming majority of ulama say that there is majaz in the Quran. As for haqiqah, the usage of words for their original meanings and intents, this occurs in the Quran. Now there are different types of haqiqah, there are different types. If you scroll down to the bottom of the notes, it's there. You have haqiqah lughawiyya, which is linguistically, this is what the word originally means. So are there linguistic haqa'iq in the Quran? Yes, by the agreement of the ulama. Then you have something called haqiqah al-shar'iyya, which is the usage of a word in the context of sharia for a particular meaning. In other words, in the sharia, this word was given a specific designated meaning originally. So in the language, it has a different meaning. Once it was brought into the sharia, it was brought in for a specific designated meaning. That specific designated meaning originally is called haqiqatun shar'iyya. Like the word salah. The word salah in the Arabic language originally meant dua. Or if you go back, break it back to the original linguistic unit, it comes from either wasala, which means to reach or to arrive, or sila, which means to connect. But in the Sharia, the word salah originally designated one specific meaning, which is what we know, salah. So this is called haqiqah shar'iyya. This occurs in the Quran according to the majority. If you laugh about it, the majority say yes. Then there's the third category called haqiqat urfiyya. The word has its original meaning in the language, linguistically, but it was brought over to the custom of the people, culture, civilization. In certain society, it has specific designation. That specific designation is called haqiqatun urfiyya. Now that can be general or it can be specific, like everybody in Malaysia, for example. Or it can be specific, where doctors use this term in the medical field to mean a specific thing, or in any specific field of expertise. That is called khas, urfiyya, khas. So you have general urfiyya, and then you have specific urfiyya. Specific urfi, haqiqi meanings occur in the Quran according to majority of the ulama. Specific ones happen according to majority of ulama. Imam al-Qarafi said it's almost by agreement. General urfi, haqiqi words occur in the Quran according to the vast majority of the ulama. So basically, majaz according to the majority. Haqiqat lughawiyya by agreement of the ulama. Haqiqat shar'iyya and haqiqa urfiyya amma according to the majority. Haqiqat urfiyya khassa according to al-Qarafi almost by ijma'. Why is this important, or how does it impact tafsir? Simple. Are we going to interpret things in the Quran figuratively, or are we going to interpret them literally? Or can we interpret any part of the Quran figuratively, or must we interpret all of it literally? This is why it's important to know. Are there haqa'iq in the Quran, majaz in the Quran, what type of haqiq? All of these issues need to be sorted out before one can even start to interpret the words of the Quran. So he says the third segment, al-majaz. Bear in mind the definition of majaz, because some of the examples of majaz that the author gave in reality are not majaz. Majaz is the usage of a word in other than its original meaning. In other than its original intent or reference, whether that original reference is lughawi, linguistic, or shar'i, or urfi, am, or khas. Whether it's linguistic, whether it's religious, whether it is based on custom or society, whether it's general or specific. Anyway, so then he says, rahimahullah, منها اختصار الحذف ترك الخبر والفرد جامع إن يجاز عن آخر. منها اختصار. Example of majaz, he said, is اختصار, concision. Ikhtisar is concision, and there are many types of concision. Concision means to make something concise. And you can do that in many ways. To shorten something without giving up meaning. Right? You can do that in many ways. So he counts this as an example of majaz, which in reality it's not. In reality, the ulama of usul al-fiqh say that ikhtisar is not a type of majaz. Why? Because you're not using a word or a group of words outside of their original meaning, which is the definition of majaz. You're simply not mentioning certain things that is understood by context, but that shouldn't be mentioned. When we say shouldn't be mentioned, is that if somebody is not being stylistic in speech, then they would mention those things. In other words, they are excluded simply because of the style of speech. But if somebody is not, if somebody is asked to say something non-stylistically, just give a narrative, they would have to mention certain things. But for different purposes, you leave it out, and the audience, the recipient of that speech, knows why it is being left out. For example, for the sake of brevity. Somebody's telling a story, they're not going to describe 8 days worth of activity. They're going to say 8 days later. Skip all of that by one sentence. 8 days later. The audience knows why the person is skipping the 8 days. Either it's not important to the meaning that is trying to be communicated, or we don't have time to describe 8 days worth of activity, or to this storyline, what happened in those 8 days are unnecessary. Or we're gonna get to them, we're trying to create some suspense or something like that. So 8 days later, this happens, the audience, anything in that 8 days later, and then we bring it up. This is normal storytelling. So the audience understands why, at the end of the whole thing, they understand why the person just said 8 days later. This is a type of ikhtisar, but it's not majaz technically, because you're not using a word outside of its original intent or meaning. Anyway, the author included that as being a type of majaz. منها الاختصار. And then he says al-hadth. Al-hadth, omission, is also a type of ikhtisar. Omission is a type of ikhtisar, but it's where you're deleting certain things. You are not deleting, but you're omitting certain things because it is understood by context. And it says tark al-khabar. Also a type of concision, but this is where the predicate of a sentence is left out because it is understood by context. So these are 3 examples of majaz that he gave. And we said they're not in reality majaz. Then he says فرض والفرض جبر إن يوجز عن آخر. Another example of majaz is to use a singular word to refer to a plural reference. Like the word insan. وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. By time, as time moves on, man, but the word is singular, al-insan. Insan wahid. He didn't say al-anasi. So this is the use of a singular term, but because that singular term can mean several layers of things, each are included in the other, the one use covers the entire genus. Where man operates in the exact same way in the English language. Man can be the species human being, man as opposed to animal. Or man as opposed to woman. So, or man, there's 3 layers in the English language. But somebody can say man to represent the one use of the word man includes every sub-layer that it. So when in the Quran it says, وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ. Humanity. We're not talking about a single human being. By time, man finds himself in a state of loss. So the use of a singular term to represent multiple reference. We said, وَالْفَضْلُ جَمْعٌ إِنْ يُجَزْ عَنْ آخَرٍ. If it is used as majaz, if it can be used figuratively to represent the plural, meaning the use of a singular word to represent a plural reference, if this is done in the normal figurative speech of that language. In this case, we're talking about Arabic. But if it cannot normally be done, if it would not be eloquent in the language, then the Quran would not use it. So singular or the opposite. Use a plural word to represent a singular reference. In the Quran it says that on Yawm al-Qiyamah, people would ask Allah Azza wa Jal to come back to the earth so that they can do good. So they would say, Rabbi irji'uni. Rabbi, oh my Lord, irji'uni. Irji'u is a command to plural. You're commanding multiple people, but the Lord that you're commanding is one. Allah Azza wa Jalla. But in the Arabic language, it's common to use a plural term as a sign of respect. You speak to a scholar, for example, you use the plural term as a sign of respect. This was normal. So, to use a singular for a plural or a plural for a singular. This is an example of majaz. And then he says, وَاحِدُهَا عَنِ الْمُثَنَّى وَالَّذِي عَقَلْ عَنْ ضِدٍّ لَهُ أَوْ عَكْسُهِ. So, وَاحِدُهَا مِنَ الْمُثَنَّى, to use a singular term to represent jewel. To use a singular term to represent a jewel. In Arabic, we have singular, jewel, and plural. So in the Quran it says, وَاللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ أَحَقُّ أَن يُرْضُوهُ. Allah and His Messenger and the Prophet ﷺ have the greater right that people try to please Him. Allah and the Prophet is more deserving of people's effort to gain His pleasure. So His pleasure, yurduhu, this one half is singular, but the sentence began by saying Allahu wa Rasul. So here Allah Azza wa Jalla starts by saying the Prophet and Himself, but then use the singular dhamir that refers to both of them. And again, all of these are done for meanings. The meaning here is to show that the Prophet ﷺ is not asking the community to do anything to please him only. To please the Prophet ﷺ. So it's telling the Sahaba, anything the Prophet ﷺ asks you to do, he is not asking you to do it to gain his pleasure. But he's asking you to do to gain the pleasure of Allah, because the Prophet ﷺ, his entire pleasure is in the pleasure of Allah Azza wa Jalla. So that's why Allah used the singular term. In other words, the pleasure of Allah and the pleasure of the Prophet is one. It's not like you're trying to please Allah and the Prophet ﷺ separately. You please Allah by pleasing the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ is pleased by anything that pleases Allah Azza wa Jalla. At no point is it separate. So,
which ayah is question?
I don't know, after. So that's another example of majaz. And then it says, وَالَّذِي عَقَلْ عَنْ ضِدٍّ لَهُ أَوْ عَكْسِهِ. To use a term that is usually used in reference for rational beings. Rational beings being human beings or jinns or angels. To use that for an inanimate object. Or the opposite. To use a term that is usually used for human beings to represent non-human beings, or in relation to non-human beings. So this is also an example of majaz. An example is قالتا آتينا طائعين. When Allah Azza wa Jalla gave the choice to the heavens and the earth to obey Allah Azza wa Jalla. By force or willingly, they say we will do it willingly. But the heavens and the earth, these are not rational beings. They don't have aql. But the Quran says ta'i'in. It is formed ta'i' and the plural ta'i'una. if it's marfu' ta'i'ina, if it's majrur or mansub, is used for plural human masculine, the masculine form. But here it's being used for the heavens and the earth. So it's using a word or a form, a linguistic form that is reserved for rational beings, for non-rational beings. So because it's using a word in other than its original reference, it is a type of majaz. Then he said, سبب التفات التقرير زيادة تقدير أو تأخير. سبب, to mention or to attribute the cause of something to other than its cause is a type of majaz. To attribute the cause, the reason, the doing of something to other than the doer. Other than the doer, I mean other than the one who directly did the act. It's a type of majaz. So Allah Azza wa Jal says about Fir'aun, يُذَبِّحُ أَبْنَاءَكُمْ, that the Pharaoh killed your children. But he didn't do the killing. He gave the command, the soldiers did the killing. But the act is being attributed to the one who commanded it. Because without that command, the one who actually did it would not have done it. So that's a type of majaz. It's called majaz mursal. There are several types of majaz mursal, where you mention the reason for something when you're talking about you mention the cause, but you're talking about the cause. Or you mention a part of something, but you're referring to the entire thing. Or you mention the container in the thing that hosts something, but you're actually referring to the thing that's inside that thing. Like was'al al-qarya, ask the village, which can't ask the village. Ask the people of the village. So you're using the word that represents the thing, but you're actually referring to those that are inside that thing. Similar to, we have a sports match, we say Malaysia won XYZ. Malaysia didn't win. Nor did the people of Malaysia win. One team of Malaysians won. You say Malaysia won, England won, stuff like that. So it exists in most languages. So sabab. So to attribute actions to other than their direct causes. Or iltifat. Iltifat is where there is a switch in the grammatical person within one speech. So the grammatical persons, first, second, third persons. So when there is a switch within one speech, and you're referring to the same thing, but there's a switch in the point of view. So the grammatical persons are basically representing different points of view in a speech. So the first person, the second, the first representing the speaker, the second, the one spoken to, the third, the one spoken about. So for example, in Surah Al-Fatiha, Alhamdu Lillah, it starts off with the third person point of view. So praise be to Allah. So Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, the second goes the same way, and then until you reach Iyyaka na'budu. So it switches now from the person speaking in the third person. So for example, if I'm reciting Surah Al-Fatiha, I'm the speaker, but I'm referring to Allah in the third person. Alhamdulillah. At this point, it doesn't sound, the speech doesn't sound like I am addressing Allah. Right? I'm speaking about Allah. All praises are for Allah. Allah is Rahman, He is Rahim, He is Maliki, Yawmiddin. Then now it becomes as if I'm addressing Allah. Iyyaka na'budu, you. So this is called iltifat. So counts this as a type of majaz, which in reality is not a type of majaz. So Imam al-Sudki rahimahullah and others mentioned that it's not a type of majaz. Why? What's the definition of majaz? To use a word or a combination of words with other than their original reference. And this is not happening here. This is just a simple switch in the point of view of speech. So in reality, it's not majaz. So it says sabab iltifatu at-takrir. Takrir is to repeat a word in order to emphasize its meaning. In order to emphasize its meaning. So, for example, hayhata lima tu'adun. So hayhat, right away after that, hayhat. So it's repeated. Again, he counts this as a type of majaz. In reality, the ulama of usul al-fiqh would not consider this a type of majaz. Because you're not using the word for other than its original reference. And then there's a huge discussion among the ulama as to, anyway, that's not necessary. Because they're saying it's a repeat, why is the second one majaz but not the first? The second one is completely like the first, mithlul awwal, and whatever relates to a mithl relates to what it's like. So the second one is majaz, then the first has to be majaz as well. Anyway, so he says takrir. Then he says ziyadat taqdeemu aw ta'khir. Ziyada is where there is a word in the Quran, word. When we say word here, we're including harf. Because they give meaning. Like li, kitab, hada kitabu, li Muhammad. Li is one, that really gives a meaning. So we're including it among words. So a word in the Quran that is zaid. Zaid means it's extra, fulfilling a specific purpose, but the meaning is not the meaning of the original word. In that particular usage, it is not functioning in its normal capacity. An example, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. Ka means what? In the Arabic language, this ka, the meaning of it is tashbih, is to indicate similitude, likeness. This is like that. So we say, Muhammad ka al-qamari fil jamali. The Prophet ﷺ is like the moon in its beauty. This ka al-qamari is to indicate, to communicate similarity. There's a meaning. So in the Quran it says, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. If it operates in its meaning, if it does its normal function in this sentence, then the meaning becomes لَيْسَ, there is not, ka, like, mithlihi, like, the like of God, anything, which is an affirmation of something like Allah. There is nothing like that which is like Allah. So you're first saying that there's something like Allah, and then there's nothing else like that thing, if it operates in its normal meaning. So majority of the ulama say in this ayah it cannot have its original meaning. Because that's, if we understand that word to function in its normal way, then the ayah is giving a meaning opposite to what the ayah actually is trying to communicate, or not trying, is communicating. Because it's trying to negate anything like Allah Azza wa Jalla. So we say Za'id. Laysa kamithlihi shay'un simply means there's nothing like Allah Azza wa Jalla. And there's a point of majority of the ulama. There are some who say it's not Za'id. Like Imam al-Taftazani rahimahullah said that it's not Za'id, but it's used to emphasize how much there's nothing like Allah Azza wa Jalla. Because the negation of something like something is also a negation of that thing. If I say, for example, if somebody's being petty, and you say to that person, "Nah, don't do that. People like yourselves. People like yourself shouldn't be petty." You're not saying you shouldn't be petty. You're saying people like you should not be. But in that way, you're also saying you shouldn't be, because you're saying people like you should not be. So if people like you, then you are among the people we're talking about. So basically, you like those people should not be petty. But it's emphasizing. So Imam al-Taftazani said that's the type of kaf in this ayah. But that theologically, that's very problematic, because that is admission or affirming a likeness dimnan. That's not possible, and that's why majority say it's that. Anyway, he says not taqreer, ziyad. So ziyad is a type of majaz. Why? Because as we saw, it's using a word in other than its original function. So the original function of kaf is to indicate likeness. Here, kaf is being used not to indicate likeness. So ziyadatun, taqdeemun or ta'khir, to bring forth something or to push it back. To bring forth something or to push it back. To mention something, yani, in the structure of the language, to mention it before its place. That's a type of majaz. Or to mention it after its place. It's a type of majaz. So for example, فَضَحِكَتْ فَبَشَّرْنَاهَا. When in reality, it's فَبَشَّرْنَاهَا فَضَحِكَتْ. She received the good news, then she smiled or laughed. But the Quran described the opposite. She laughed. فَبَشَّرْنَاهَا. So this fa now becomes because. Because we gave her. We interpret it as because. But in terms of language, linguistically, it's giving sequence. But it's putting the reason for the laughter after the laughter, which in reality the reason must come before. So this is a type of majaz. So he says, زيادة تقديم أو تأخير. And then he goes on. Should we continue or too much? That's stop. So we'll stop there. We'll continue in the next session, inshallah. هذا وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر صلى الله عليه وسلم.